Welcome. Part of our continuing series where we talk to reporters, writers, columnists, professors, activists, executive directors of nonprofits, anybody on the left, anybody on the right, anybody who can think clearly and provide complete thoughts. And we want to provide them unedited and unaltered directly to you, the public, so that you could do this thing that was popular back in when I was in high school. It was called Thinking for Yourself. Maybe it'll come back. Maybe it won't. Who knows? Maybe we'll have a renaissance. With us today, it is our privilege to have Rosemary Smith. She's the managing director of the Getting Better Foundation. She has a passion for making things better for people she meets and the environment she loves, and that makes Rosemary the perfect fit as the managing director of the Getting Better Foundation. Her background in media, marketing, communications is well suited to further GBF's mission of building trust through education about positive human progress and behavior. Rosemary is a media literacy expert, demonstrating quickly and efficiently the damages resulting from online manipulation. Her selfless networking skills enable her to share her expertise with global experts, fellow educators, students, parents, and governments. Along with Getting Better founder and CEO Joe Phelps, Rosemary believes it's a great time to be alive, although not everyone believes that to be the case. Could media illiteracy be part of the dilemma affecting mental well-being, polarization of communities, racism, anxiety, depression, and suicidology? That's a new word for me. GBF's nonpartisan mission of building trust through the truth about the positive evolution of human progress supports media and information literacy education and has produced the award-winning documentary, Trust Me, to bring awareness of what may be the most important topic of our time. Rosemary was the vice president and national sales manager for Eagle Radio Group, headquartered in Northern Michigan. She did everything from copywriting to advertising, sales, and community involvement while managing sales and creative staff. Rosemary and her husband Kent built their own media group from the ground up, including towers and transmitters, buildings, and talent. In one of the worst economic downturns the state of Michigan ever faced, Eagle Radio became the go-to for listeners and media clients in dozens of markets. They were named the voice of Northern Michigan. In 2018, the Smiths sold their group of radio stations, relocating to Montana to be closer to the 4-year-old children. That's where Rosemary met Joe Phelps, founder and CEO of the Getting Better Foundation. Realizing their missions were closely aligned, Rosemary came on board as managing director for the foundation. As impact producer of the film, Rosemary helped cement the foundation's diverse, world-class advisory board of scientists, psychologists, neuroeconomists, journalists, and media literacy specialists. She and Joe recruited Hollywood talent to direct and produce the multi-award-winning feature documentary, Trust Me. Rosemary spearheads its global distribution, including festival, conference, and embassy screenings. The missions of the organization educate people on the reality of positive trends in crime, conflict, poverty, healthcare, education, general being of mankind. Gather and guide a group of talented and passionate believers, researchers, strategists, financiers, and other specialists and administrators to execute the plan. They're trying to build an organization with thousands of members influencing millions of people globally, promoting the fact that the human race is evolving towards being more loving and responsible. Part of their three key tenets: vital, promote human social progress by shining a light on the truth; visible, become a trusted resource for social statistics by providing unbiased and transparent information; and viable, creating a sustainable organization that will grow and prosper for generations. In 2015, the Getting Better Foundation was formed with the objective of building trust through media. Recently, Trust Me received the Walter Cronkite Excellence in Journalism Award for the feature film in its education program written by the News Literacy Project. And I believe also the program was saluted by the State Department. But before we get into that further, let's see how well we did with the introduction. Rosemary,
you went deep. I don't think there's anything left for us to talk about.
Okay, great. Hey, great interview. Thanks for coming out. Want to say thank you. Thank you to the audience. This will be our shortest interview, a live interview ever. So the movie, this is the movie that I watched, and this is the movie you guys put on. There's Trust Me. And here's a picture of the movie, Trust Me. So you can go to the Getting Better Foundation and type in Trust Me, or you can go to YouTube or just Google and type in Trust Me. How do you know what to believe? And this movie was saluted or recommended by the U.S. State Department or something to that effect. Is that right?
Yeah, we work hand in hand with the State Department, who has declared media literacy a strategic defense priority, as well as NATO. So they support screenings of the film and workshops with educators globally. We've worked with them at universities, at high schools, at embassies, at consulates, and American corners throughout the world. Would you like a list of some of the countries we've worked in? And then we're also partnering with the Center for Media Literacy, who has created a framework curriculum that's been tested to reduce violence and antisocial behaviors using media literacy. So media literacy is a credible solution to what is ailing our world today.
Is it okay to call it the solution?
I would say it's a solution because, and a strong one, and probably the leading one. So if we want to delve into legislative efforts, the states protect educators and are empowering educators to utilize media literacy if and when they find that it's empowering for their students. But our federal government doesn't mandate what the schools teach. So, and do we want them to? Do we want them to have power over what we can say and do on the internet? Nothing really has changed as far as our media. Back when the printing press was formed, we citizens had to learn how to consume media.
Right.
So that's been a long time ago. Then radio came about and we thought, oh, how are we going to consume this media so quickly, like they can spew it out on the radio? Television. Do you remember when we went through that whole crisis about, mothers worried about what their children are going to see on the television, these violent pictures and images and videos, and the speed. And then we went to 24-hour television. Well, now what has changed is the speed and the accuracy or lack of accuracy in the information that is out there since the advent of the internet. So we've been teaching media literacy for decades. We've been learning how to review media for decades. Now it's just the speed, and we have to teach ourselves and our children that how to use this as a tool. It's a wonderful tool. We're not of the belief that we shouldn't use these tools. They're so valuable. It's how I keep track of my family and my work when I'm traveling. It's so valuable for education, and we can get into AI and how that's going to change things. But we need to learn how to use these devices responsibly and how to share what we're talking about responsibly, just for peace, right? Just so we're not considered propagandists, like what's happening in Europe right now, or all over the world, Latin America and the US. We're so polarized. And I think media literacy is a leading solution because legislative efforts infringe upon our Bill of Rights, infringe upon our freedom of expression. Unless there are solutions there, if you're interested in hearing about those that are being pondered.
Yeah, very much. Just real quick before we do that, though. So to back you up, the New York Times has said that we're in the second, basically, evolution. The first one was this Gutenberg printing press in the 1500s, and that the internet is such a big game-changing ability to allow so much communication information in everybody's hands that it's basically like the second revolution of the Gutenberg printing press, and that we're in that age right now. And I remind everybody, because they don't know, typically, when the Gutenberg printing press came out, yeah, it was a great time, but it also led to the collapse of multiple nations, a lot of warfare, and a lot of people died because suddenly information was no longer controlled. And this group called the Catholic Church Empire didn't like that. And all these little peoples underneath them started going, I can do this. I can do that. This is possible? Really? And within about 10 to 15 years, the map of Europe literally changed. So dramatic, the most dramatic consequences can happen from information revolutions. Maybe that will happen here. We've certainly seen some governments toppled because of the ability of the internet. I think there's called the Velvet Revolutions or whatever the peaceful revolutions in the Middle East, especially I'm drawing a blank on the names, but a lot of Middle Eastern countries had peaceful revolutions, and it was specifically because of the internet, Tahrir Square, et cetera, Egypt. Also, when you were talking about how the State Department or the Defense Department views media literacy as a national security issue or something to that effect.
It's a strategic defense priority.
Strategic defense priority.
Mm-hmm.
Let me get that down. Strategic defense. Well, it reminded me of Finland. So Finland is, as I understand, the premier country on the earth for teaching their children critical thinking and media literacy. And the reason that they're doing it is it's considered a national security issue. They don't debate and go, wouldn't it be nice if we did this for our kids, or think of the children, or it's not an education issue. It's seen as a national security issue because they live right next to Russia. And Russia's trying to influence them. They're a small country, and they realize, if they start getting torn apart, that's going to set them up for invasion. So they've done a great job teaching their kids and their teachers how to do this. So it's certainly possible, but they had to raise it to the level of national security, like a nuclear strike or an ISIS terrorist attack. It wasn't just an education debate. I just wanted to get those out. So what are the magic solutions? Are they magic that we can use to teach media literacy to decrease polarization? What would be the top 3 or 5 in your opinion?
Well, first of all, I would say, schools. Throughout the curriculum, media literacy doesn't have to be a special course in a school. It can be taught K through 12. It can be taught in colleges. In every classroom, we have professors of math who instill media literacy lessons in math, right? In gym, we taught a really fun middle school class, or actually the whole school, how to integrate media literacy into their phys ed classes. So, kids sometimes are a little bit scattered. I don't know if you have kids, but especially at that middle school age, they're very easily distracted. So one of the ways to get them to pay attention is with exercise. So you're killing 2 birds with 1 stone, right? You're getting them to exercise, you're getting their endorphins going, and then you introduce a media literacy lesson, try to get them to come back together in a circle and learn about media literacy by passing a beach ball and making it fun. Because we've taken so much fun and joy out of this world, right? Let's try to put some of that back in and not make it such medicine for them to digest, but fun lessons, how to deconstruct ads that they're susceptible to since the advent of the internet. So education is number 1. And there was, civics in schools. There used to be broad civics in schools, teaching critical learning skills, critical thinking skills. And that's not all. And when I talk about this, yes, there are pockets. Washington State is one, in Rhode Island. There are pockets of states who are implementing standards and passionate teachers who are utilizing media literacy, but it's not for all students, right? So like in our state of Montana, there are students on the reservations who are not just lacking broadband and breakfast in the morning. There's such poverty. They're not but they have a phone. So they're not learning these media literacy skills. So they're not able to compete in the broad scheme of things with other students who are afforded that. This is America. Didn't we say that every student should have the same access to education and a roof over their heads and nutrition? This is an easy fix. Bring back civics in schools. So I'll get off my soapbox there.
No. What? So you had 2 right there, and I totally agree. bring back civics in schools. I absolutely agree. I remember when I was starting the series on political polarization, interviewing people, I took the very last year of government at my high school. I started off the show joking about my high school. I remember I was in government civics class, and I'm 46 years old. And it was the last year they offered it. And our teacher said, "You guys are lucky because we're not offering this again next year, ever again." And it was government and civics, and it was just wiped out because they thought, well, we don't really need that. We need to focus on math and science. And there's an argument there, but they just scrapped the arts and they scrapped the critical thinking. They scrapped government and civics. God, 25 years ago. And then since 2015, in the Wall Street Journal, Inside Higher Education, many other places, corporations since 2015 have been saying all these college graduates you're pumping out don't have critical thinking skills.
Right.
They've been complaining about this at a national level for the better part of close to a decade now. So maybe it's not a surprise we go back to 2015. Corporations are saying, wow, all your top college graduates don't have critical thinking skills. And now we're in a position where the Defense Department is worried about us being duped because we lack critical thinking skills as a nation. Possibly two connected trends.
And we have been duped. I mean, the Russians have been duping us, the Chinese, and I'm not prejudiced, but I'm saying the Russian government has been duping the United States government for 100 years. The Chinese government has been doing the same. We just had a screening in Ottawa in Canada, and we said, why is media literacy so important to you? Oh, do you not know what the Chinese government did to create polarization with getting vaccines in Canada? Do you not know how the Chinese are creating misinformation about Canadian real estate so they can come in and buy real estate in Canada because they value it so highly and they have the money to do it? Yeah. So the other thing I would go back to, number 2, would be the fairness doctrine. When we owned radio stations, my husband and I, we not only wanted to report the truth, but we were obligated to. We were obligated to report true facts, to represent all sides of a story, not just two sides of the story, because that further polarizes. If we just had a Republican and a Democrat come in and talk about an election, that doesn't represent the independents or the Green Party. So representing all sides, not just those that are most vocal, especially since the advent of the internet, because the advent of the internet did a wonderful thing, and it gave voice to everybody, almost everybody, right? Those who have access to Wi-Fi.
We could. That's a whole other discussion. Yeah.
Well, it's great. Everybody has a voice, but everybody has a voice. Whether they use it or not is their choice. So if I am very passionate about something and I'm very loud about something, my voice will get heard. Mm-hmm. But if I'm in the middle and I say, you know what, I don't want to be affiliated with them, I don't want to be affiliated with them, I'm just going to go about my own business, do my job, come home, feed my family. I don't want anything to do with all that noise. So we lose that very valuable central voice. So I'd say number 2 is fairness doctrine. Some version of it.
Right. Moderates have been shown, we've covered this a little bit in this series, moderates have been shown to be less vocal, less active in politics compared to the radicals on the extreme end. So that's why you see a lot more of extreme opinions. You go, where's the middle of America? Traditionally, the middle of America is less likely to be agitated, less likely to be involved. They're just less agitated about it. And the people who are following politics more are more agitated. So there's that issue. And as far as the fairness doctrine, correct me if I'm wrong, I think you're referring to Ronald Reagan, when he was president, removed a law that had been around, I think, since 1945, 1955, that basically said you have to cover both sides or attempt to cover both sides. And then he single-handedly removed that. And that allowed Rush Limbaugh and Fox News and MSNBC, to be fair, to rise to their positions. Is that roughly what you're talking about?
Yes. Yes. We still operated under that with our radio stations until we sold them and then moved to Montana. So
So if we had a return of the fairness doctrine where the news had to tell both sides, and if we started teaching our students critical thinking and a return to civics and government, and we started teaching them media literacy, it may not fix the problem, but it would make us a much, 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 much better off. Like not day one, but maybe, within a 5 to 7 year time frame, we would be in a much better position as a nation. Would that be a fair statement?
absolutely. I heard a third solution just this week.
Please.
And I've actually been thinking along these lines for some time because we're so worried about the government telling us what we can and can't say online. We're so worried about our privacy, or there's a very vocal part of our population who's worried about privacy. And we all are, but the next generation might not be because they're like, Mom, privacy, my kids' privacy is out the window. Don't even think for a minute that you have any privacy if you're online. It's the same premise as if you offer your DNA to Ancestry or 23andMe or one of these, these DNA companies. They then take your DNA, and isn't this fun? You get a graph of where your lineage was established. Where's your ancestry coming from? Oh my goodness, I have Kenyan bloodlines in me. I have, Native American bloodlines in me. I have all these. Isn't this great? And they can tell me that my parents might or might not have had cancer, and should I get screened for cancer? This is valuable, right? But do you remember, and do you know about the cases where the FBI, the police, they found somebody through their DNA where they requested a judge provide a warrant to get that DNA information and arrest somebody?
Yeah.
Because my kid did the crime, and now they know who it is because they found DNA at the crime scene.
Yeah.
So this premise would be very easy. It would say, if you want to have an online account on Facebook, on Instagram, on TikTok, on YouTube, any of these places, you have to register your name and give some type of identifying information, your address, some kind of validity to who you are before you can share online. So you say, well, isn't that already done? No, not necessarily, because anybody can share information online. This would say, oh, Rosemary, you have an online account. Yes. And I gladly put my information in there to register my account. But if I had nefarious goals, if I didn't want to disclose who I am, is that really a voice that we want online? Are bots required?
Right.
In our film, you saw how bots create accounts using a SIM card. It takes 3 minutes.
I've also heard about Elon Musk, not getting into it, suggesting this idea, and a couple other people, that right now, you're absolutely right. You can have fake accounts, you can have fake names, you can hide yourself, etc. And if there's no consequence, people are, constantly, I hear people say things they would never say on the streets in person, ever. And they're just like, I could just say, and they're like, well, I got to get this idea across. Well, sure, but there's different ways to say criticize Antifa or criticize BLM with the word choice you use. And they're using the most extreme inflammatory words to do that, instead of saying, I disagree with their platform and here's my specific reasons. More of a reasonable, germane conversation. Absolutely. There's nothing like that out there. People can do this now. I think it would help dramatically if you say something, it's you. It's not a fake identity. It's you. And then we know who's saying what. And we'd also know
Yeah.
what ideas are popular? Because right now, bots are used by almost everybody to accentuate certain things. I understand the Russian government did nefarious things with the 2016 election, although it has been shown to have had no more than 1% effect on the electorate. We find that out 3 years later. Still, it was bad and wrong. At the same time, when Elon Musk took over Twitter, again, I'm not endorsing it, the accounts for people started wildly changing before he even took over the thing. Like certain people's accounts, like Barack Obama, dropped, and then other people's accounts, like and I'm not a fan, but the son of Donald Trump grew, and they're going, well, how'd that happen? Unless you were suppressing numbers and introducing bots, and that was Twitter, not the Russian government. So this problem seems to be very ubiquitous. Is it reasonable for us to think we're going to get Silicon Valley to remove bots when Silicon Valley invented and popularized bots themselves?
And do we really want them being the ones who police this?
I don't, you know, I'm just, obviously.
When it might just be a pretty simple piece of legislation where precedent's already been set by things like our DNA. Now, this people are saying, oh, privacy, privacy. First of all, again, like my kids say, you don't have any privacy if you're online. If somebody wants your information, it's a pretty easy search. This would actually, I think, further enhance our privacy, because here's the thing. A police officer couldn't just use my information. They'd have to go to a judge and get a warrant, just like any other crime. Go to a judge. Judge has to rule, this is viable. Yes, we believe Rosemary Smith's information will help us solve this crime that's being committed. And then they can take that warrant to the platform company. The platform company, of course, like any other good citizen, would have to provide that information because they have a warrant. Just like I'd have to allow the police in my house to search my house. They can now search that person's database and utilize it. It would also protect me from them doing that without a warrant. Right?
Which there's been a lot of that going on. I'm not going to get into it, but there's been a lot of accessing information without warrants, abusing the secret FISA process. So nothing like what you're talking about is going on right now. I could definitely see a huge improvement if, God, we actually had the protections of law like we used to have for the last century regarding the internet. It seems like we don't. I mean, right away when the internet started getting big, they're like, well, we're just going to take your data. I don't remember you asking me. Yeah, it's cool. It's fine. And then the government said, oh, well, we're just going to spy on you. I don't remember you asking me. It's cool. It's fine. So sounds like you're talking about bringing some reasonable governance and accountability as envisioned by the founding fathers to the modern age. I think that's a great idea. And also point out, we're not doing anything like this right now, right? Like we're not doing anything like policing bots. We're not doing anything like you have to have your identity as yours. We're not doing anything like making sure the legal system works through the warrant process before it grabs our data. Those all sound like wonderful reforms. The plan, I guess, would be to introduce those or have legislation enacted that would make those things happen.
It would be the model legislation is already out there. It would be the gentleman who proposes this. He didn't want me to mention that he is proposing this as of yet, but he's brilliant. Once you do learn about him, you will say, "Oh, this guy did this, 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 and this." He operated as an assistant to many secretaries of defense. He knows government inside and out. He knows corporate world inside and out. He's been the advisor to Fortune 500 companies and global companies and countries. He's right on track with this.
Okay. And there already is some sort of draft legislation out there. It's not a theoretical concept. Okay.
Right. Like he said, and I was skeptical, but then the more I started thinking about it, he said, it's a page and a half. And I'm like, what? It's not like, healthcare.
No, I hear you. And that's good. I hope it will happen. I recall, though, when the Russian government interfered in our elections by using data collected by Facebook. And then Facebook acted like, don't look at me. I don't know what happened. And it was like, you didn't know a foreign government was collecting all this data and what they were doing with it for months on end? Or was it nobody complained it wasn't illegal and the money was good? And they got away scot-free. Nothing happened to them. They lost 25% of marketing share, but nothing legally.
If we think we're being manipulated here in the United States, we just came back from a tour in Romania where we spent a year with the US Embassy from Bucharest in educating high school students, university students, professors, educators, librarians, parents, how to utilize media literacy. We show the film. We show a 1 hour made, edited for public television version of the film because there are some scenes that made the film be rated 13 and up by Common Sense Media and News Literacy Project. Okay. So, there's a lynching, there's fake Obama uses the F-bomb, right? So
yeah.
We edit those out and it's 1 hour. We screen the film. We have discussion with experts following the film and or workshops with educators using the News Literacy Project curriculums for parents, for K-12 or for collegiate. And we've now partnered with that Center for Media Literacy so we can also educate educators, create a legacy by teaching them how to teach media literacy in their schools. So how to either dabble into it if they're new, and then add resources to this framework as they become more competent in teaching media literacy, or as resources in their country become available. But my original point was, if we think we're being manipulated here, those Baltic countries are being bombarded. Some of them, their residents, if you remember, there used to be a huge USSR that was much bigger than it is today. And it encompassed those countries in the Baltics who still speak Russian. So imagine if we are living here in the United States. Imagine I speak Spanish. I don't speak English yet. So if I speak Spanish and I come to the United States as an immigrant, or Polish, or I'm not picking
No,
on
I totally get you. Totally
but
get you.
think about how I might only have access to Mexican broadcasters who are giving me a different message than, of course, US broadcasters would. Right. So that's what's happening. That's how the Ukraine situation was so easily came about, because they've been listening to Russian propaganda and they still are.
True. Recently, a lot of the African countries seem to be siding with Russia on the conflict. I also remember when Anthony Blinken went on TV and said, the whole world is with us against Russia. And then Asia, Latin America, and Africa, basically the entire global South, or 70% of the population, said, no, we're not. You didn't even bother to talk to us. And what they were pointing out was, as a Latino, America's invaded every single Latin American country except for Costa Rica.
Right.
So when Russia goes, hey, guys, America's the liar, not us, every single Latin American country except for Costa Rica is like, I don't know, but I remember when you guys lied and did it to us. So who do I believe now? And unfortunately, all of Africa basically isn't buying what Europe and America is saying, whether it's true or not. And that's because of a horrible history of colonialism and lying to those people too. How do we get the entire global South to start believing the West when it says Russia's the liar and not us, given the last 100 years of colonialism?
I think it still comes down to media literacy, because it's not a political issue. We're not trying to get you to think right, to think left. We're just trying to get you to think for yourself. So when you think for yourself, you're able to use what's important to you, your faith, your beliefs, your how you want to raise your children. When you can think for yourself, you make your own decisions. make my own decisions about what church I want to go to. I make my own decisions about what schools I want my children to go to, and what language I want them to learn, and what ethics I want them to learn. So media literacy would allow Africans, Americans, Canadians, Latin Americans to think critically and say, how do I want to vote on this water issue? How do I want to vote on this power issue? I want to research the facts and find out what is true so that I'm able to read that ballot and know what it's actually saying, so I don't vote against something that I might believe in. That happens. So media literacy is not just about misinformation, disinformation. It's how to consume media or how to create it using the truth, using the facts that are available to us at the time, and not being so critical of others. I mean, COVID is a great example. You know, as the science started coming out, we were learning new facts. So maybe what the facts were that we thought were correct initially turned out to be a little bit different.
So we shouldn't go into media literacy saying it ends up with this. I mean, if for example, it turns out that every once in a while China was right on an issue and America wasn't telling the truth, we're okay with the American people coming to that conclusion on their own?
Look, there's a little truth to every piece of propaganda, right?
Well, I'm just wondering, because although when I hear the media term, what I am worried about is that I'm hearing, well, we don't want you buying any foreign news. We just want you to buy American domestic news.
No. Media literacy is more about how to, if you read something that gets you upset or happy or whatever the emotion that it instills in you, to be able to say, maybe this isn't the whole story. Maybe I'll look elsewhere. And it doesn't mean I should look only within the US. There are companies now like Advantes Media who've created a media bias chart. There's a few other companies doing this globally now. And so you can do several things. You can say, oh, I want to explore what the left is saying on this issue, or I want to explore what the right is saying on this issue, or I primarily listen to this news from this source. Where does that fall? Uh-oh, maybe I'm only listening to conservative opinions. Maybe I should broaden what I watch, read, listen to gain a larger perspective. Maybe I should Google this that got me so upset or got me so happy and find out if it's real. Maybe I should check another source to make sure that this person asking me for money isn't,
right,
a criminal.
Right.
So
it means critical thinking, think for yourself, and double check the research. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to come to some agreed upon conclusion by any particular actor or group of actors. It's being able to really dive into the information you're absorbing and find out if it's true or not. That's the whole concept. Is that fair?
Yeah, and it gives students, and I say students meaning anyone from K-12, collegiate, and adults and seniors who are the largest population of people being manipulated by information on the internet. So think about that. But it gives all students, it empowers them with tools to not only discern media, but then to create it, because we're all publishers now. It's not just the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal or CNN or Fox, or they're not just the sole creators. We are all creators. So we want to make sure that when we're exposing ourselves by sharing disinformation, malinformation, or something that's going to create ire or dissent, we have to make sure that we're sharing credible information, because that's our persona. That's our help me with the word here. That's our
Character, esprit de corps.
Yeah.
Is it? How do we make sure that? So what do you feel about the idea of a federal government, basically Ministry of Truth, to take from the popular film V for Vendetta? But they've experimented with this recently with, I think, Nina Jankowicz, and it failed miserably after she was shown to be promoting misinformation herself that she did not take down from her own Twitter account. And then they're coming back to the idea, is not taking down information that turns out to be fake cool, or is that also bad?
I don't know the answer to that.
So,
but I think,
well, if I say apples are going to kill you, and I say that for 3 years, and then it turns out, and it's all over my Twitter page, apples are going to kill you, apples are going to kill you. And then on the 4th year, a study comes out saying apples were never going to kill you. The reason that you said apples were going to kill you was based upon fake news. And then I go, okay, but I'm not going to mention that story, and I won't take down any of the tweets over the last 3 years saying apples are poison. Is that good for getting us to a position where we live in a society of critical thinkers without fake news?
No.
Okay.
No, but so is it right? Is it criminal? Is it going to get me arrested? Just because we have a right to say what we think, it doesn't mean that when we say what we think is right. Okay, a good example is Max Lucado writes a story about this gentleman. I use that term loosely, but he's canoeing, right, on a very busy river, and they come across a campground with families on both sides of the river. And this gentleman accidentally turns his canoe over. Him and his wife get plunged into the freezing river. All their belongings go everywhere. Can you imagine? Your phone, is it your lunch, your everything's in the river, floating down the river, and you can't catch up to it. It's a busy river. And he uses every expletive in the world and he's yelling at people on the shore. He's yelling at his wife, and he's cursing everything that's happening. And I didn't even want to go on this adventure. And so the people on the shore took him to court. They found out who he was, took him to court, and said, "You exposed my kids to all this terrible language." And so the judge deliberated and came back and said, "You have a right to say what you think, but it doesn't mean that you're right in saying that." So it's kind of a whole ethical thing. Do we really want to share hate, share, there are people that want to because they have a motive, but overall, I think people are good. And I think that they really want to find a way to lessen this polarization that's affecting us so much, where we can't even go to Thanksgiving dinner with our in-laws because, they're Democrats and we're Republicans, or vice versa. It's a way to speak with people civilly, have civil discourse. And even if I don't agree with the philosophy of my mother-in-law, say, for example, it allows me a mechanism to have that civil discourse with her and say, I get what you say, and I really do. I want to hear more. And maybe, what I think will be different. Maybe I'll think something different after hearing your opinion. But I would hope that once I heard yours, that you would listen to mine.
Absolutely. I think give and take. I think we live in a time right now where it's your information's all bad and stupid and wrong and evil, and all my information is perfect, data checked, and absolutely perfect without question. So you need to be quiet and just listen to everything I say. And I don't need to listen to anything you have to say because it's all garbage.
Right.
I unfortunately feel we live in a society where that's the opinion by both sides of each other, equaling, in my opinion, at least over half of the American population.
It's going to take somebody to say, I'll listen to you first. Listen first. And that might as well be me.
What about because I always come to, when two people, I've interviewed a variety of professors, and some of them, the argument goes like this: the problem's all on the right. They're the ones that do all the bad stuff. They're the ones that don't like democracy. They've given up on democracy. They always spread lies. The left basically doesn't do anything like this. So really, there's no reason or need for the left to reform or do anything better. All the problems on the right. So the Republicans need to do all the reforming in order for polarization to get better. And I'm thinking to myself, I have never seen a situation in my life, or read of one, or seen one ever, involving two humans where it ended with, you're all bad, you're all wrong, you have to change, and I don't need to do anything because I'm perfect. I've never seen where two people got to a better place with that sort of attitude. And I'm wondering, is that going to work here in America?
We need champions. We need champions like John Tester from Montana. Has a record of crossing the aisle and getting together. He's a Democrat but he doesn't alienate either side, and he's worked together with Republicans to create legislative events that benefit Montanans. Isn't that what legislators are supposed to do?
I would think so. I would hope so.
We need champions. We need more and more champions, and there are some, but not enough. Not enough.
It seems to me when I talk, because I'm a liberal and I'm in California, but I know a lot of conservatives and they're willing to talk with me. In fact, I'm the only liberal I know that knows as many conservatives. And part of it is that every once in a while I'll go, that thing you guys talk about and the left says is all garbage? I know it's true. And they'll go, oh, and I only have to do that for like one thing. I could disagree on 19 other facts. If I give them one, it seems to open the door to, you're willing to listen a little bit. And I go to my fellow liberals and I say, this is what we should do. And the attitude is, yeah, but all their facts are wrong. So there's nothing for us to admit. And I go, okay, well, what about the Durham report? The Durham report came out and it said Hillary Clinton, and basically the FBI, lied about Trump colluding with Russia. Trump's a bad man, and he's racist and sexist and horrible, and he had corrupt business dealings and all sorts of nastiness, and maybe misplaced missing documents. But we were told the guy basically had a one-on-one relationship with Vladimir Putin and orchestrated a, hey, Vlad, help me win the election. Okay, I will consciously work with you to do that. And that was not true at all. And then we found that out through the Mueller report, the House Intelligence Select report, the Senate Select Intelligence report, two more impeachments, and then finally the Durham report came out and said, no, it was fake. Yet when I talk to fellow liberals about that, and I go, man, it makes me mad that these Republicans are running around saying Donald Trump won the election. Biden clearly won the election. Donald Trump saying stop the steal. He's faking it up. Yeah, that makes me mad. It's almost like when Hillary said Donald Trump colluded with the Russians, and we all bought that for 3 years and said that and promoted that, and then it turned out to be totally fake. Huh? What are you talking about? We never did anything like that. So I think that's not good. I think if we're going to criticize the Republicans and get them to believe you lied about the steal, Biden was the duly elected official, maybe it might help for us to go, a couple of years ago when we did that, we were wrong. Sorry. And that's why we're saying you're wrong now, because we too could make mistakes. And when I come to that, I find conservatives willing to listen. And yet I find no liberal willing to talk about the Durham report.
Marcus, you are practicing media literacy.
Hey! I didn't know you were going to say that. I didn't know you were going to say that. Practice media. What I see is,
yeah. There are a lot of organizations now. When we first embarked on this project, it was our CEO, Joe Phelps, who is the founder of our Getting Better Foundation, and he funded the foundation when he sold the Phelps Agency in California, in LA. So
look at that, Californians.
Yes.
Okay, California's trying to save America. Never heard that story before.
Right. So he started collecting good news stories, which you can imagine were very few and far between. So he'd go to parties and people would say, oh, the crime, oh, famine, oh, the pestilence, oh, the world is going to hell. And he'd say, actually, if you look at the FBI crime statistics, there's actually, things are improving. Actually, if you look at our world in data, poverty and famine, 200,000 people are being lifted out of poverty and famine every day, every month, but you wouldn't know that because it's so gradual. And anybody who's been a stock investor knows what an Ibbotson chart is. An Ibbotson chart measures the performance of the stock market over decades, over the course of time. And it's not a straight line up. Anyone who's invested in stocks knows it goes up and down and up and down and up and down. And sometimes it goes way up, sometimes it goes way down. But over the long term, investing in stocks is a good option because they go up, right? The stock market, as measured by the stock market indices. I'm not a financial advisor, so
I've
I'm
never
not.
heard this term before, and I consider myself financially literate. That's fascinating.
But over the long term, they go up. It's the same thing with all of progress. It's not a straight line. Of course, there's been some dips in crime since COVID. Of course, there's been some dips in life expectancy. But over the long term, over the past 100 years, over the past 50 years, are we not better than we were before the advent of vaccines? Are we not better off than when farmers found out how to get food to impoverished countries? Are we not better off today than we were 10, 20, 30, 50 years ago? Yes. I mean, I'm going to say yes, we are.
Yes.
So we're not these Pollyannas saying, oh, well, wonderful, it's a wonderful time to be alive. We're saying it is a wonderful time to be alive when we are armed with the facts that things are getting better. It's just progressively. And we are smart humans. We can figure out solutions to these problems we have. We can figure out how to, protect people across the globe and how to consume media. It's just that we have to have the tools.
I'm on board. And I'm on board. Because I watched the video and I thought that was great, but I thought it was great. But then I said, what about all the bad actors in America? Yeah, Russia did a number on us, but we got people here doing it. And I'm like, the Defense Department can't go, well, watch out for fellow Americans. Neither the CIA, it's not a good look for them, but it's a problem.
Yeah.
What are we going to do about all the companies doing bots, all the people who lie on both sides, all the elected officials? I mean, Trump was horrible at fake news. God, was he horrible. But then right after he gets defeated, Biden goes out and goes, well, there was basically no vaccines till I got here.
Right.
And that was a total lie. And he massively got corrected by the media. I'm like, what are we doing? Do you not have staff? Like, nobody advised President Biden. That's not true. How did that get out there? Either they didn't care or their staffing is so horrible they didn't know how to do it. Either one is a horrible option. I thought we were getting past fake news. Nothing like that should have remotely happened at all. And yet
or the big lie, right?
Or the big lie.
The big lie philosophy is it can be untrue, but if you just keep saying it over and over and over again, you don't just convince yourself that it's true, but you start convincing others because they're like, how can she think that well, maybe it is true. Oh, and then they start thinking that way. So the big lie is, you just keep sharing mistruths over and over and over again. And some people believe them just because of the frequency of the message.
Hermann Göring was I think, Nazi commander of the Luftwaffe. And the idea, I believe, comes from him when he was imprisoned after World War II. They go, how did you guys get away with it? And he goes, you just tell such a big lie, nobody would ever doubt that. They're like, they wouldn't lie about that.
Right.
And people buy it.
Yep.
And there was this thing, they must have weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. The president, the CIA, the FBI director, the vice president would never lie about that. Well, actually, they all did. Yeah, totally. And we know that now. Yeah. So, and then none of them were brought to justice. So I guess that's cool.
Maybe we need a B team. You know, we have the CIA as the A team. Let that continue
Yeah.
the way it's going, or whatever reform is
Yeah.
going to come down the pike. But maybe a B team who has access to all of the information and is promised for longevity that it's not going to be held against them if they bring this to the commander, right?
Right.
We might not have gone into Iraq. We might, not
Uh,
have believed another big lie.
yeah, I remember Jeremy Scahill, who was a reporter, and he got dropped off from some of the publications because he talked about, I think, Obama and the drone strikes, and that wasn't popular. So you saw him removed and dropped down. And then I think there was the CNN or ABC reporter who reported on the break into Nancy Pelosi's house and that the door was open before the robber got there. He was removed from his job and disappeared from TV for a few days. So yeah, you're right. These things happen. How do we get to a society where powerful politicians and powerful people aren't able to punish individual reporters for telling the truth? Because this goes on now. Like the two examples I just named were in the last year. So
Yeah.
how do we do that? Plus, I'm sorry, but us locking up Julian Assange looks horrible to the entire planet. I understand that it's a debate here in America, but if you talk to any of our Western allies, they're freaking out and going, "You're imprisoning journalists like a dictatorship." That's what everyone in Europe and the West thinks. And we're going, no, 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 this is different. Uh, how are we the right people to do this when we keep making mistakes like this?
Well, you're preaching to the Committee for the Protection of Journalists' ears. That's what they're all about. The CPJ. We have to protect, and not only protect credible journalists, but we have to support them. One of the other things that has happened since the advent of the internet, and something that's led to this polarization, is that credible journalists working for newspapers are going away. They're going away. In Montana, in Great Falls, Montana, there used to be, don't quote me on the number here. In Great Falls, Montana, there used to be, I think it was 13 newspapers operating throughout that metropolis. There's one. There's one. How do you cover local high school sports? How do you cover education reform? How do you cover what's important to the community, water issues? How do you do that with one person who's probably making minimum wage because they're passionate about the truth? We have to find a way. And there are I've heard some rumblings about nonprofits, purchasing news organizations so that they could, but we have to support them. We have to support newspapers, media, radio, television. They know what's going on in our communities, but they can't report it because they don't have the people or the funding.
Right.
That's gone away because it's so much more powerful if I advertise my, my water company online than it is with the local radio market. That's kind of why we had to sell our stations, is we just couldn't afford to employ people anymore.
Yeah. If anybody goes online and you type in Media Consolidation of America, there's a page on Wikipedia. You don't really hear this much talked about these days, but basically during the George W. Bush and during the Barack Obama period, we went from a period of about 450 independent media corporations to 5, most of which are located in New York City, less than 1 to 2 miles from each other. So 450 across all of America to 5, almost all of which are headquartered in the most powerful city in the US of A. And a lot of them just repeat national headlines. There's this very famous Conan O'Brien skit where he says, Conan O'Brien's going to push the envelope on gay marriage. This was a few years ago when it was controversial. It's not controversial anymore. And then 30 different news stations repeated the exact same headline, and he had a clip showing, here's what I said, and here's how 30 different news stations literally repeated the exact same news thing. how are all these independent local stations saying the same thing exactly word for word, unless they're not independent? Conan O'Brien was pointing that out years ago. It's only gotten worse since then. We also have information showing when you lose a local newspaper, it leads to more only national news coverage for that area. And then quickly you find that area turning into more political polarization. So loss of news equals more, loss of local news equals more political polarization. There's definitely a connect.
It sounds like we need to start wrapping up, but something that you would really like and your audience would like is in Trust Me, we have a very good friend in Jeffrey Gettleman, Pulitzer Prize winning journalist from New York Times, covered is the South Asia managing director for the Times still. And he explains very clearly that it's not a news person's job to worry about how many times a story is being repeated. It's their job to research the facts, represent as many sides as possible, and then report them with a little care, a little concern, and knowing their audiences. He uses an example of plane crashes, right? Because he and a few other journalists recognized that there was an issue with some of these planes that were crashing. So his job is not to report about the tens of thousands of planes that take off and land safely every day. His job is to bring awareness of that problem that made that one plane crash, blow up in the middle of the air and kill 100 people. That's his job, because then whoever manufactured that plane can see what the problem is and fix it so that it doesn't kill more people. So a credible journalist has a huge responsibility to bring a little care and concern to the reporting, but pay attention to the important issues.
Last question. I hope you found it was a fair interview. You got to say your piece. We didn't try to manipulate your words.
Absolutely. You do a wonderful job, Marcus. And I really appreciate the opportunity to share our work with your audience.
I really appreciate that. You don't have to, but we always ask, do you have any recommendations? Do you know anybody who might be willing to be part of an interview on this topic, political polarization? You don't have to, but we always try to keep the conversation going. I didn't mean to shock you.
I am so happy you asked that, because
That's great.
There's three that come to mind right off.
Yes, please.
One is Amanda Ripley.
Okay.
She is the author of High Conflict. Okay. And she's gone all over the world researching mediators and how they bring people together to talk about very difficult issues in a civil manner. You'd love her. High Conflict, Amanda Ripley. Rutger Bregman.
How do you spell the last name?
Bregman.
Okay.
Author of Humankind.
Got it.
With the emphasis on kind.
Got it. I see the word. Yeah.
And the third one, who I would be thrilled to watch your podcast, is you would think I'd be so thrilled that I'd remember his name, Calder Walton. If you haven't interviewed him, he's the author. He's from the UK, but I think he's living in the US now. The author of Spies, the epic intelligence war between East and West.
Okay.
He can demonstrate how he goes all the way back to, Winston Churchill and what's happened in the Middle East to cause dissension there. And he shows that the Cold War hasn't ended.
Well, how do you spell his first name?
Calder, Calder. His research, now that all of these archives are being opened, he's researched them and he's finding all of these military documents that are telling what the truth is.
Right.
Yeah, you'd love him.
And for everyone at home, the movie is called The Secret Lives of Strangers. It's based upon ex-Stasi documents showing how they spied, and it's based upon true stories. So there's a
Oh,
movie out basically on the same topic.
I haven't
Um,
seen that.
yeah, Secret Lives of Strangers, I think with Ralph Fiennes. It came out a few years ago. Kind of a low burner, but it was good. We'll leave it there. I'll just say one last thing. Facebook is the primary source of information for a lot of the global south. It is effectively their internet. That's because Facebook went there and said, hey, I know you got internet, but we'll set up mega internet for you through Facebook. They've also been, doing some of the same things for other governments and dictators that they allowed the Russian government to accidentally do. And it's resulted in other dictators rising to the top. So we're going to have to take on Facebook if we're actually going to get media literacy out to the rest of the global south, which is most of the planet's population. Leave it there. Thank you so much for coming out.
Thank
I
you.
will email you a copy of the video shortly.
Okay.
Did you have any last minute statements? Was there anything you felt you wanted to say and you weren't able to say?
Just that I think that legislation, forcing people to prove who they are would go a long way. And media literacy is a cure. It is. It's a weapon. Empower yourselves with media literacy, and watch. Trust me. And if you don't come away thinking this is a problem, but more importantly, there are solutions and there are people working on this, and I should check these sources out. You can check it out at trustmedocumentary.com, and our gettingbetterfoundation.org has a bunch of resources, and our advisory board members who you might want to follow, and then a lot of resources on our resources tab that you can tap into if you want to become more media literate yourself.
And that's the gettingbetterfoundation.org. That's
Right.
gettingbetterfoundation.org. That's where you can find them and the video and more about Rosemary and about the work that they do. So thank you so much. I'm going to email you shortly, copy the video, and thank you for coming out. Thanks for answering questions. Thanks for talking. And I always say this, and I know you're not a professor, but I really appreciate it when the people come out and do interviews and they're willing to talk explorative in a manner, exploring the questions as far as they go.
It was my honor. Thank you, Marcus.
Okay. I'll email you shortly, and thank you for coming out.
Okay.
Appreciate it.